All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody. I'm a few minutes late as usual. Thanks for waiting and welcome to a much better week than the last time that we talked. So we're going to go through all things Bitcoin, Bitcoin miners, the market, the Fed. There wasn't a lot of news with the Bitcoin miners, but there were a few that had some small news, some big news. So we do have a lot to go through. There's two things we're not going to talk about, George. Hello, George.
What aren't we going to talk about? Oh, don't say it.
Number
the best
one
team ever in the NFL.
Number one, the Buffalo Bills, and number two, politics. So there, we got those out of the way. For those of you who don't know, we will not talk about it, but the Bills did play Thursday night football on Prime, and they won. Okay, let's talk Bitcoin. I got the 15-minute chart up. Want to say hello to all of our members. I see a bunch of members in the chat. Hello and welcome. Let's see if nope, still no thumbs up button. So I can't hit the button, but if you guys could please hit the like button. We're at 20 likes. We're going for 100 and then 200. Do us a big favor. And it's funny because these are the weeks the stream needs help more than ever. It seems like on the rough weeks, more people show up. I think people are afraid. They want to talk on the good weeks. People kind of just chill out. So do us a favor. Please smash the like button and let's get some people here and let's talk about it. And okay, the real Gary Gensler, thank you for the super chat. The more you talk bills, the more Bitcoin goes up. Told you. All right. Well, all right. Maybe we'll have to have very late in the stream. Maybe we'll have to have a Bills segment so that for those who care, they can check it out later. So we'll just wait for a few people to roll in. Hello. While I'm looking, hello, Edmund and Robert and Alexander and Rectember. I'm going to talk about Rectember later. Riot's down 53% year to date, says Rectember, who's a member. Thanks for being a member. Robert, Pogo, Barry, Scott, the real Gary Gensler. If I missed you, sorry, I'm just reading down the chat real quick. So hello to everybody. How you doing, George?
Tom, I got into Iris earlier this week, like Monday, I think, and I bought a whole bunch of ETFs. That's my new thing. I'm an ETF nut.
Aha. All right. Well, I kind of have converted over the last couple of years into more and more of my portfolio in ETFs. I just think it's getting harder and harder. The market's getting irrational about individual stocks. So I don't want to get too bogged down in this, but it makes it harder and harder. You know, if you're lucky and you guess right, then, and I don't want to say lucky, that's not the right word, but, you know, and then I don't want to say guess either, but the market's getting more and more volatile and more irrational. So sometimes the ETFs that are bigger baskets of things are a safer bet, I guess. I wouldn't say a better one, a safer one. And certain things, like I know you can talk about later, if you're dealing in commodities and that kind of stuff, sometimes rather than try and go trade commodities, you can accomplish the same thing through ETFs. So I'll let you talk about that whenever you want. Barry C., who's been a member for 24 months, said, everybody more relaxed this week? So I'm guessing the answer to that is yes. This was a green week. Every single Bitcoin miner was green this week. They weren't all green today, a couple of outliers today, but big green week for Bitcoin, big green week for the Bitcoin miners after two just brutal weeks in a row. We're going to look at each week of the last 3 weeks individually because they are worth looking at. And then we're going to look year to date. We're going to check in. And I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. I think the Bitcoin miners, when we look at the year to date, you're going to see it is just not pretty. It's just not. I mean, a lot of them, most of them are red year to date. Some of them have been, just short of a train wreck. But I actually think we're getting very close to the time where the Bitcoin miners are going to start outperforming Bitcoin over the next year. So, and now, we'll get to that in more detail, but I just sharing my thoughts, and they've for the last 9-ish months, they have underperformed Bitcoin on the, for the large part, most of them, fairly substantially. And there's a reason for that. We're stuck in this price range, so we'll look at the charts and talk about that. But I do think ultimately we're going to break out of the top of this price range, and that is when the Bitcoin miners are going to run. And that, for those of you who have been holding and waiting, I can't predict the future. I'm giving you my opinion, not financial advice, but I do think, we're still going to get rewarded for this, in my opinion, if you can hold and wait.
Tom, that's a pretty good opinion.
I'm just telling you, and I'll dig into why I think that later. And I mean, it's not complicated. Bitcoin here, even, we're pushing 60,000. I don't think we hit it today. If I look, it looks like, oh, we did. Okay, so about 45 minutes ago, we got to $60,025. So, we bounced off of last Friday. We were desperately trying to, I'm going to go to the 1 day and we'll just look at it.
Just remember, last Friday, I bought Bitcoin.
This is where Bitcoin was on the, nope. Why is it? Yeah. Yep. So this is where Bitcoin was on the live stream last Friday. We were dipping under this line. And for the first half of the stream, we were debating, are we about to lose this line? This, what I think is a very important line of support. And we spent a lot of time on the stream. Are we going to hold this? About halfway through the stream, we went above this. Well, you can see that moment on the stream was the absolute bottom. And we've rallied straight since then. Now, is the rally over? We'll figure that out, or we'll discuss. So let's just start right there with a poll on that. I'm just start with a simple yes and no, and we'll drill down a little more later. Will Bitcoin continue the rally next week? I mean, you can see this was so that was Friday. Saturday was flat. And then from there, from the bottom on Friday until the close, until right now, we're up 14%. That is a nice week for Bitcoin. That's a strong, solid week. So, and we're going to look at each one of the Bitcoin miners. Like I said, all 12 of the Bitcoin miners that we follow were green this week. A couple of them did have some announcements. The market didn't seem to react, too much one way or the other to, CleanSpark had a big announcement. Bitfarms had a medium or small announcement. So we will get to both of those. Those are on the list, but the market didn't seem to care too much. I don't think that the market loved Bitfarms' announcement today. I think they finished no, they did. Okay, so they finished exactly zero. They're red here on this, but they finished zero on the day. So they were a couple. TerraWolf was in the red. Bitcoin was flat. And actually, out of the 12 we follow, those are the only ones that didn't go up. Core Scientific up 7.6% today. That was the big winner. Cypher was also at zero today. For some reason, it must be, fractions of a penny, because they show green at zero, whereas Bitfarms shows red up zero. So a couple of them flat on what was a really nice day for Bitcoin. But when you look at the week, you'll see, it was all good for the week. All right. Let's get into it. The first thing, so I'm going to bounce around a little bit. Let me find the article. So for the last week, really, we got CPI data. So we need to look at that and talk about that. I'm not going to dwell on it too much. Everybody's probably gone through that at great length and heard, to the nth degree. But we need to go through it because after CPI data came out, what the Fed was going to do seemed to be pretty much set in stone. And then the Wall Street Journal put out an article, and I've never seen one article from a paper flip things, and I'm going to show you what I mean. Okay, so this is from Reuters. Wall Street advances as traders' bets rise for bigger Fed rate cut. And if you look, Wall Street's main indexes closed higher on Friday. Okay, so former New York Fed President Bill Dudley said late Thursday there was a strong case for a 50 basis point interest rate cut. Reports in the Wall Street Journal and other media had said earlier Thursday the Fed faces a difficult decision on how much to ease on September 18th. And if you read that article, it goes on to talk about the person that wrote that is considered somewhat, well, let me see here. There's just rumblings that have started to bubble up again that the discussion in the Fed is leaving 50 basis points on the table. This from Jim Baird, Chief Investment Officer with Plant Moran Financial Advisors. So this seemed locked in. We talked about this Friday. We talked about this on the Tuesday live stream, which was, and then the Fed came out, the CPI data came out, which we'll look at, and it just seemed to really solidify that, it was going to be a 25 basis point rate cut. That's what was going on. And I'm going to see where this landed at the end of the day. I'll press refresh. But this is the CME Fed Watch tool, which essentially is forecasting what the futures are pricing in as to these rate cuts. So you're going to see this jumped from yesterday, 28% chance of a 50 basis point rate cut. This jumped to a 45% chance today. So it was inching towards 50-50, and really it was all on those couple of comments. So actually the market had an up day on this, but I do not like this. These 50-50s, and it's 45-55, I think these are the worst case scenarios, because what this does is the market rallied on this today, Bitcoin rallied on this today, but what it does is it puts uncertainty into the market where there was very nearly certainty. I mean, there was a chance we were going to get 50 basis points, but the market was really, really big. Money was pretty much priced in, counting on a 25 basis point. Now we don't know. So now there's a chance for a big rug pull next week. We end up getting our 25, but instead of that being just as the market expected, the market's getting its hopes up that it's going to be 50. And this adds uncertainty where I didn't want it. We don't need it, and we'll see. But I did not think this was a good development today. So that's what I would say about that. And to jump, this jumped 17% in one day on, one comment by one of the members of the Fed and kind of an insider at the Wall Street Journal that's got, allegedly some inside sources. So all of that was from CPI data, which came in, and we're not going to do a deep dive on that. Like I said, that's been done to death. But basically, last month CPI was 2.9. The expectation this month is that it was going to be 2.6, and it came in at 2.5. Now, if you dig deeper, some things beat, some things matched, some things missed a little, but essentially it was a good report. And on Wednesday, we had a gigantic fake out. So I'll ask later who bought on Wednesday, because there was a massive dip. About an hour after that, all of a sudden the market tanked, Bitcoin tanked, everything tanked badly. And then by the end of the day, a lot of things were green. So it was Wednesday. If we go to the hourly on what happened Wednesday, it was just a ridiculous giant fake out after the CPI data came out. And again, I just feel like retail investors, as always, it's retail investors that get decimated on this, because you get a beat on CPI. And yes, if you could quabble, well, this one, this little part beat, this little part missed, but 2.5 is by far the best number we've had in 3 years. I mean, 2.9 was the best number. Now, remember, that still does mean we have inflation. Prices are still going up on top of all the inflation we've already had. I understand that, but 2.5 is the best number. And if you take a 20-year average of inflation, 2.5 on CPI is actually less than the 20-year average. So we are totally normalized with inflation. The problem is we just went through 2 or 3 years of, I won't say hyperinflation, but an escalated level of inflation that, still leaves, for me personally, I say this every week, but I just feel it at the grocery store. It's at restaurants, whatever the case may be, I think it's pretty tough out there. So that's my opinion. What do you think?
You also live in a very expensive place, Tom.
Well, that's true. This is an expensive place to live, and housing was one of the things that's still very stubborn. A lot of people, conventional wisdom is housing is a lagging indicator, and that number will catch up and fix, but we'll see. But I mean, are prices better, in Georgia or New York, George? I mean,
no, not really. I mean, New York was a freaking wow. New York was really expensive. Georgia's it's always been cheaper than New York. But the eggs are like $8. I mean, the type of eggs I buy are like $8 a dozen.
And eggs were up big again in this report. So if you drilled way down, you could see some stuff and eggs have been one of the things that have just been up and away. There have been several things. So,
Tom, can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Can you look at the consensus of what the rate is going to be, the cut?
Yeah.
What in the world?
Yeah, back to this page right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this just changed today dramatically. So
is this going to be the setup?
This is yes. So I can't say yes. I don't know. I mean, I just went through an article, that talked about, for those of you who missed, it was basically an article that one of the members of the Fed came out and they're making, quote, a strong case for a 50 basis point rate cut. Wall Street Journal had put out an article earlier, and that's when this really changed. And then later they got some confirmation here that, 50's definitely on the table. There's going to be a big, knockdown, drag out debate. Whereas, 25 was just, we were a lock for 25. And I'm afraid this is all a giant fake out, because if we let's go look at the market here. So this happens to be gold, which I think again hit an all-time high today, every day. But look at how green the S&P was up 0.5%. The NASDAQ was up 0.65%. The Russell was up 2.5%. And again, this is where the risk-on type stuff tends to do much better in this, in anticipation of easing monetary policy, some rate cuts, some quantitative easing, pushing money out into the market. I think people are starting to price that in. And so the Russell, which has lagged these two for, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ for the last 3+ years now, it still hasn't made its move. The Russell, where the S&P and the NASDAQ are virtually back to their all-time highs, the Russell isn't even close right now. So I am invested in, I think I've mentioned this before. Why is that not working?
What happened?
Just one of the buttons on my thing wasn't working. So absolutely, positively, not financial advice. This is a leveraged play on the Russell 2000. So this is one of my bigger positions, because I think that the Russell 2000 has just dramatically underperformed for years. And it's in these higher rate environments, which are fairly infrequent. But these are the times that the Russell lags the S&P and the NASDAQ. I think it's got a lot of catching up to do. So, but again, this is an ETF, but it's a leveraged ETF. So not financial advice. Please be ultra careful when, these are tricky because you don't even really, you're not going into your margin, but this is a leveraged play. So it's highly volatile. And on a lot of these leveraged plays, even if it doesn't go in the wrong direction, if things go sideways, there's an erosion on these leveraged ETFs. So you got to be very careful investing in these. They are very high risk. Just my 2 cents.
Did you?
You just broke up a little bit, George. Can you repeat that one?
Did you get into NVIDIA? Did you buy?
I never got down to my spot.
Oh, really?
I know a lot of things got close, but did not hit. Midway saying Bitcoin is back pretty close to 60,000. Yes. So if we go to the 1 day, we're at 59,955 at the moment. I have this other. So these, we just held this line, this white line down here at around 53,500. This held on the daily candle. Again, last Friday, that was the gigantic. You can see we candle wicked well below this. This was not looking good at all. We were 2 days in a row and Bitcoin just moving in the wrong direction. And it did find support here once again. We've had a nice rally, but, if I just draw a little line, somewhere in this area, I do think there's, and we seem to be past that at the moment, but we're only $600 past that. And we've only been past it for, hours. So I think that's a little bit of a potential line of resistance right there. And then I think if we can get above this and get above this line at around 60,200, I mean, the next real big line of resistance is, retesting this prior high up over 64,000. So yeah, there's a bunch of lines in the middle you'll see. So, as always, there's support and resistance all over the place. But I do think if we can close a daily candle above this and drift up over the weekend, everything seems to, in my opinion, to be lining up towards maybe taking a run back and retesting this, and then maybe retesting this. But I will tell you, this is like time number 7 or 8 that I've talked about, the technicals setting up for a breakout. And, every time it's right there, it's, we keep failing. So let me go to, George likes this chart a lot better. It's a lot clearer. You can see we keep this line of resistance. This is a descending line of resistance, and we keep failing at this line. I have a few here, but we failed at it here, and then again, and then again, and then again. This last time we were halfway through the move, and we just totally stalled out and went straight back down. So it's. I'm going to go back to the other one because I have a line on here. On the daily RSI, this is where I really got fooled last time. And this is another reason to never rely on just one indicator. I'm going to interrupt myself. If you guys could do us a giant favor, we're at 49 likes. We're going for 100 likes. If you could please smash the like button. It does help the live stream out in real time. It makes a huge difference. So I appreciate it if you would consider smashing the like button. So usually, one of my little mottos is, good things happen for Bitcoin above 50 on the daily RSI. And that has almost always been true. But like all indicators, not always. Nothing is perfect. And I got tricked badly right here. Right? You'll see we went above 50. We retested it and then started to move. And to me, it looked like, and that was all of this right here. So to me, it looked like we were on our way, back to the top of this trading range. And, it didn't happen. It just stopped. So once again, we find ourselves, yesterday we closed at, very close to 50. And today we've broken out above 50 on the 1-day RSI. So, and, unless something bizarre happens, we're going to have, let's see, we're at like 55 right now. So, we'll have a nice breakout above this. So these are the times, that I think there's a potential to keep running, right? Because we have all of this room to the upside. And if we really look out, it's a lot more room than this, because you can see it is very common for Bitcoin to run up to 85 or, push 90 on these runs on the daily RSI. Back in February, we did this, in December of 23, in October of 23. So, a lot of times we do hit that resistance somewhere around 70. But, I mean, we're at 55. The run from 55 to, 70 or 75, or if it's one of these big runs to 80 or 85, that leaves a lot of room to the upside. Having said that, the last few times that, and particularly this right here, this is where I thought we would make our run back up to the top of our trading range. And we just got rejected right in the middle. So anything can happen. That's why we try to look at as many indicators as we can. And even with that, even when you start to have 2, 3, 4, 5 things line up and tell you one thing's going to happen, there's just no guarantee, right? If there was guarantees, then the market wouldn't work. So there is always, if your money's invested, then there is risk. All right, so you want to I want to go to just what the Bitcoin miners did this week. And then I want to get to, there was some news among a couple of the Bitcoin miners, so we will go through that in specific. Cleanspark had some big news, and Bitfarms had some, I'm calling it medium news. Not sure how I feel about that news, so we'll talk about that. But let's see if I can find my chart here. All right, so this is week over week as of the close today, as of the close of the U.S. equity markets today. This is what the Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin did. So I'm going to show you the last 2 weeks. So we'll come right back to this. This was last week, right? This was a nightmare. Bitcoin down 9%. All 12 of the Bitcoin miners down worse than that, right? CleanSpark down 24%. Some of the big ones, Cypher down 23%, Marathon, the largest by market cap, down 20%, right? The bad week across the board, Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. But the problem was, this is the week before. That was 2 weeks in a row. So Bitcoin down 9% last week, 8% 2 weeks ago. I mean, that was a rough run. And that bounced us exactly, we saw on that chart. That took us all the way right back down to give a strong retest of the bottom of our trading range. So, 2 rough weeks in a row. So when we get this week, this is great news, and I will take it. I'm not complaining, but putting it into larger context, this follows 2 weeks that were just dramatically down. I don't think there's a single Bitcoin miner, even with this giant green week like this, that's back to where it was 2 weeks ago. So there's more room to go. And I think, I'm feeling like that's what's going to happen next week. So the poll is, will Bitcoin continue the rally next week? And we have 72% that say yes, it will. And 20, it just ticked to 29%, say no. So a pretty strong yes, but, still a decent amount of people think, no, we're gonna, this was it. And we head back down. So I just showed you a couple of the reasons why I think we're set up to continue to run, and we'll look at some more. We'll end that poll. What's your thought, George? Next week, up, down? And remember, next week is rate cut week. So we're going to get a rate cut next Wednesday. The question is, how big is it going to be? And what is the market going to do about it? Because, depending on which articles you read, you see articles that say, a 50 basis point rate cut is going to be just exactly what Bitcoin needs. And I read another article, if it's a 50 basis point rate cut, the market's going to panic and everything's going to go down. It's going to be bad for the market. It's going to be bad for Bitcoin. So, there's no consensus out there at all. The market, and that's why I say that this debate back on between 25 and 50 is uncertainty. None of it's good. Today the market liked the increased potential of a 50 basis point rate cut. But two things, careful what you wish for. And number two, is this a buy the rumor, sell the news, which so often happens. Robert Anderson said, no miners are getting love. A lot of expansion news has gone with no reward. And I agree with that, Robert. I really, really think that for as long as we are, and I've been saying this for a few months now, and, I'm getting sick of saying it and hearing it, and I'm getting sick of being stuck inside of this range, as I know many of you are. But for as long as we're playing out this pattern, there's just no reason for the Bitcoin miners to take off. I think we need to, when we see a confirmation of a breakout out of this range, this is a 6-month consolidation. And, the potential good news is on this, the longer these periods of consolidation, a lot of times, and again, there's no guarantee of this, but it's like a coil. It continues to compress and compress and consolidate. Sometimes, we get a bigger and bigger move. And again, if we zoom out more, here, this is potentially, if we can break out of the upside, this could turn out to be a gigantic bull flag. Now, we're 6+ months into this. So, how long can we go sideways? Who knows? I did not think it was going to be 6 months personally, but it has been, and we're not done. And we're right back to the middle of our trading range here. I mean, it's incredible. We'll end that poll. Let's go back to... So you can see some of the less popular Bitcoin miners from a retail investor standpoint actually had the best weeks, right? There's not a lot of buzz around BitDeer and Hut. They don't release a lot of news. But they had the best, both of those had the best week this week, up 25%, up 26%. But Marathon, which is the largest by market cap, we looked last week, they were down 20%. Well, this week they're up 21%. So again, this doesn't even get them back to where they were 2 weeks ago, not even close, but we'll take it, right? Bitcoin was up 12% this week. And if we look from the very bottom to the very top, it was actually more like a 14% move, but from the close to close, 12% on the week. All the Bitcoin miners beat Bitcoin this week, but only a couple of these, starting to get up to between 19 and 26%. That's starting to get towards the type of, leveraged move that we like to see on the Bitcoin miners. But if we go to year to date, you're going to see that all of this is just a drop in the bucket because it's just year to date. And let's go there. This is year to date. So the Bitcoin miners, we are now 8.5 months into this year, and 9 of the 12 Bitcoin miners that we follow are in the red. Iron did turn from red back to green this week. So at one point, several months ago, Iron was up 100% year to date. It went from that all the way to back in the red. Now it's flipped back into the green. Cleanspark and Hut are getting close. Cleanspark was up 50 or 60% year to date. Now it's down 15% year to date. So wild swings. We have Core Scientific up over 100%. TeraWolf up over 77%. So these two have been, they are now the superstar performers. But, this keeps changing. For several months, for 5 months, Cleanspark was the only Bitcoin miner that was doing well. Then Iron came on out of left field and actually jumped ahead of CleanSpark, and it was the best performing. Now, it's been a while that TeraWulf and Core Scientific have been in the lead and outperforming Bitcoin. And there are the only two outperforming. There's only 3 in the green. Year to date, this is tough. And somebody pointed out earlier, you've got Riot down 53%. Riot is just from a investment standpoint, and I have an investment in Riot, and I have been dollar cost averaging in on the way down on this 53% down year to date. So we'll see if this turns out to be a loser for me. I still believe that Riot's going to do its thing. But that's not how it's gone so far year to date, and it's significantly behind the other Bitcoin miners. The next closest is down 32%, and you'll see a grouping between 30 and 32%. So that's kind of the median here. And so this is a rough chart. This is a very rough year for the Bitcoin miners. Now, to what I talked about very early in the stream, I do think we're getting close to moving into a period where the reverse of this is going to happen. And it doesn't mean Bitcoin's not going to do well. So if we go back to this chart, in order for Bitcoin to break out of this range from where we are right this very minute, which is over 60,000, by the way, we need another 14% move to the upside. Now, we just had from the bottom, from last Friday to this Friday, we just had a 14% move. One more of those, so we are halfway to retesting the top of this range. If we can break out of the top of this range, at some point we're going to break out of this range, in my opinion, right? If you think the bull run's over, there are some people that think this bull run is over. I am not one of those people. So I do think we will ultimately break out of the top of this range. And when we do, and when we get to, 69 and then 74 and then, 80 and points beyond that, I think you're going to see some of those days that we're used to in a bull market where, all of the Bitcoin miners have those double-digit green days. And, there have been days where all the Bitcoin miners are up 20% in one day. We've had that multiple times over the years. Now, we've had the reverse as well, right? So that speaks to the volatility, which, I've said hundreds or thousands of times. These are super, super volatile assets. And, if these types of swings are not comfortable, and, they're not comfortable for anybody, but if they're outside of your tolerance, this is not a good space for you, because giant swings happen. So we get plus 20% days, minus 20% days. There's a lot of stocks you can invest in that, that would be a good year or a bad year, obviously, if it was down. And we have multiple days during any given year where Bitcoin miners get those kind of moves. Robert Anderson said Wolf being valued on AI/high performance computing hopeful contracts. So there's a bunch of Bitcoin miners that are moving into the high performance computing space. And Bitfarms did talk about that in the press release that we're going to go through. They're looking to move into that space. Now, they're all in on Bitcoin mining, but they are looking to add, that additional revenue. And one of the reasons is, the press release that they talked about has to do with Stronghold. They're, purchasing Stronghold, and that's a source. Essentially, at its core, Stronghold's a power company. So there's potential. There's a lot of potential to build that out, and split some of that off into using some of that energy to host high performance computing. So it is Bitfarms' intention to do that. So they're another Bitcoin miner that is moving into that space. So there's a bunch of them there's a few of them that are not, adamantly are not doing that. And it tends to be the biggest ones. Really, CleanSpark's been adamant about it. They're not doing any of that, period. They have said that. The CEO has said that. They have no interest, and they believe by not doing any of that, they have a competitive advantage over all the other Bitcoin miners. So they're pretty adamant about it. Marathon's not really getting involved in that, maybe a little bit around the fringes, but they're basically not involved. And Riot isn't. But a lot of the other Bitcoin miners, conversely, Core Scientific is knee deep, right? They have multi-billion-dollar contracts in hosting high-performance computing. So that is, that could be more than a third of their business over the next 12 years if it's with one customer, which makes me nervous, and they'll get more contracts, and they probably already have more, but the 90 something, somewhere between 90 and 99% of their high performance computing is with the one customer. And, it's 2-year contract with 2 5-year options. So, if you include all 12 of those years, it's a multi-billion-dollar contract. Bit Digital is another company that, it looks like they may end up 30, 40, 50% of their business being high performance computing. And Iron is talked about that. TerraWolf has talked about that. And now Bitfarms is talking about it. So there's a lot of companies, a lot of Bitcoin miners that feel like there's crossover and some synergies with what they're already doing. And it's a way to diversify and, hedge against, a growing Bitcoin network, a growing Bitcoin difficulty level. The reward just got cut in half. So there's a reason that the Bitcoin miners are struggling right now, right? Over the last year plus, the global hash rate has doubled. The difficulty level has more than doubled, and the reward's been cut in half. So, that's not necessarily on paper a formula for success. And that is why Bitcoin has to, for the Bitcoin miners to succeed, Bitcoin has to have its normal 4-year cycle. It has to run up past its previous all-time high to points beyond that. The one factor that goes counter to everything that I just said, because obviously all those things drive up the cost of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin mining machines, most of these companies have replaced somewhere between, 50 and 100% of their fleet with machines that are significantly more energy efficient. So that is a big counterbalancing piece to the profitability equation. A lot of these companies, from a direct cost standpoint, forgetting gap, and depreciation and all those other things, actually most of the 12 Bitcoin mining companies that we follow, even at these prices between $52,000 and $60,000, they are cash flow positive. If the ones that hodl obviously aren't cashing in their Bitcoin, but if you just take the revenue from their Bitcoin minus their direct cost of energy, their cash costs, even at these prices, they're cash flow positive, most of them. So now they're not gap positive, right? Because depreciation is real. Although it's a non-cash cost, that's what all this CapEx expenditure is about. So you don't write it off when you get it, but you got to write it off over time, and you have to count it in the equation. These companies ultimately need to make money. They need to have earnings per share to get where they're going.
Making money is always good, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that would go without saying, but in times where there's hype and there's FOMO, actually doesn't necessarily matter if they're making money. So in an equation, like let's draw out a rosy picture of the next 12 months. We start to get aggressive rate cuts. We start to get some quantitative easing. Money's pushed out into the market, and Bitcoin has its normal 4-year cycle, and it rallies to new all-time highs. Even if it's a little bit less, than each cycle's been less than the previous cycles, but, even if it was only to double this time, that puts it at around 140,000. Let's say it does not even that well and goes to 120,000. The Bitcoin miners that we're talking about, I think, will do extremely well in Bitcoin 100 or 120,000 scenarios, or 140 or beyond. But obviously, we're not at any of those levels right now. We are stuck. We are 6 months stuck in a range where people are saying, hey, the Bitcoin miner don't make sense at this number. Their business models don't make sense at $60,000.
Did you hear that one?
What was that?
Deadpool.
Deadpool?
This is a dead pool. We didn't even realize it. This is a dead pool. BTC is a dead pool right now.
Well, it's got to break out of this range. I mean, yes, at 6 months going sideways, and we're not just sideways, we are off of our highs. We were up here. Even after this nice run, we're still 18 or 19% off of our all-time high. Now, usually by this point in the Bitcoin halving cycle, we haven't even reached our previous all-time high. In this cycle, we reached it early, and we're having a pullback. It's a fairly normal pullback historically speaking, but this, and this 6, 7, 8 month window of time of consolidation is also fairly typical. But just because that is typical and that's what's happened in the past doesn't guarantee, that we're going to, follow the same pattern and break out. The 4-year cycle is really the least of the reasons that I believe that we are going to have a big move to the upside. And the bigger reasons are just, that we've talked about relentlessly is, the overall growing adoption and the massive amount of adoption that's still ahead. We've only just started to scratch the surface of most of the money in the world hasn't even had access to invest in Bitcoin up until very recently. Now we have Bitcoin ETFs. So they're starting to have access, but even a lot of the world's largest money managers are either forbidding access, giving very restricted access. So we're just getting the ball rolling here, and that's only one adoption. Let me see if I can find. There is a company that has long since adopted Bitcoin, and they had some news this week. Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy purchased 18,300 more Bitcoin for $1.1 billion. The firm's holdings have risen to 244,800 Bitcoin. So this is the company that has the most Bitcoin of any publicly traded company in the world. And it's not even close. To put it in perspective, Marathon is in second place on that list worldwide, and they just crossed 25,000 Bitcoin. So roughly, MicroStrategy has roughly 10 times more than the second place company on that list of publicly traded companies. So if you want to talk about adoption that remains, if you look on, the Fortune 500's balance sheets, there's trillions of dollars of money, basically zero of which is currently invested in Bitcoin. So, that's another pool of money. The money managers, the vanguards of the world that aren't really participating yet. All of that's ahead, and those are $9-10 trillion pools of money. So, these are big numbers I'm throwing around, but there's $1 trillion here, $10 trillion there. There's most of the money in the investment universe has not come into Bitcoin yet, but we're starting to see all of those doors open and money start to come in. So I do think that trend will continue. And obviously that's the bull case scenario for Bitcoin. So, and I mean, you've got Mike, this is another $1 billion from Michael Saylor. Well, from MicroStrategy. So that they now have at the current value, they now have $14 billion of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So they had a big up day today. They were up 8% today. So they were one of the big winners on the day. Core Scientific was up 7.6%. So I put them on this list, even though they're not a Bitcoin miner, at popular demand, because obviously if you're going to talk about Bitcoin, this is the, largest holder of Bitcoin of any publicly traded company. So, if you're looking for access from an investment standpoint to get exposure to Bitcoin, MicroStrategy is one of the ways to do that. It's been a very successful way to do that over time. And I see Edmund saying MicroStrategy, hey, I know Edmund has long since been on board with MicroStrategy, and I think that's paid off. Robin said, when does option trading start for Bitcoin? So,
the ETFs.
I will have, there's also, they're looking, Bitcoin's pumping right as we speak for some reason. Bitcoin just jumped $200 or $300. Let's see if that holds. We just got up over 60,300. We're at 60,200 right now.
I'm thinking about selling, Tom.
Thinking about selling right now, getting out.
We're just making a ton of money from last Friday to now.
Well, you played it right on the way down. So, I mean, the worst case scenario,
as I was before.
To answer your question, Robin, I don't know when options trading is starting, but they're looking to create more access to Bitcoin options trading. I got to grab for the next week's stream. I'll have a couple of those ready because this is coming at us sooner than later. And, you know, even the ETFs currently don't have options. I don't know. I think it will take a long time before there's options on the Bitcoin ETFs. This is the biggest thing about the Bitcoin ETFs. They are so restrictive. Even the companies that have the ETFs themselves are not really making it that easy for their investors to jump in and buy them. So, you know, dipping their toe in the water is almost an overstatement right now. We are super, super ridiculously early, in my opinion, on the ETFs. And there's about 17 or $18 billion in the Bitcoin ETFs. And I'll go take a look at that because we had a little bit better week. The last couple of weeks, and we talked about, this was another reason I thought we were bottoming out. We had 8 days in a row, which broke the record of outflows in the Bitcoin ETFs as of last Friday's live stream. So that did turn around. So now if we look, so this was back to August 27th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days in a row. So now this week we had 1, 2, 3, and then we only have 4 days of data. Obviously, we don't have today's data yet, but 3 of the 4 days this week, we had inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs. We did have 1 day of outflows, and it was really kind of an oddball number right here. ARK Invest, for whatever reason, had $54 million of outflows, and they tend to be really volatile with ups and downs. I'm not sure what's going on there, but, you know, net, we had 3 out of 4 days, and, you know, I'm going to say 4 out of 5 before we get the data. Just like last Friday, I assumed we had a red day for the ETFs. It was fairly obvious. It was a horrible day for Bitcoin. Well, today was a really good day for Bitcoin, so I would be kind of stunned if we didn't have inflow. So that would make 4 out of 5 days this week. So, you know, you can see this was the bottoming out process, and we're turning around. So, you know, does it keep running from here? Only time will tell. But these are a bunch of the reasons why I think we had a really strong bottom put in. If we look at the fear and greed index,
I got another question for you when you got a second time. I got a crazy one.
I'll just finish this one thing and then you can ask. So you can see last Friday, we were in extreme fear at 22. And I think that was the bottom. If I go to the chart, that was last Friday. That is the bottom. I think I'll do the 1 year. Well, we had 1 day worse. We had 2 days worse than that in August. But, you know, on this run right here, that was the absolute bottom. And we've moved back up from there. So we'll see where we go. But, you know, this bottoming out in extreme fear, all of these reasons, you know, felt like a bottom. Having said that, you know, if you remember, the mood last Friday was lookout below. We were still in a lookout below scenario. People calling for 48,000, 40,000. People calling for worse than that. And who knows? That could still happen for all we know. JD says 60K, let's go. And JJT said, hi all, sorry I'm late, no problem. Glad you could join us. Had to press the like button. Thank you. Yes, we are at 80 likes. So if you would be so kind as to hit the like button, it would be greatly appreciated. And George, you had a question or a thought or a comment?
Yeah, question and a thought before. I'm 1 week away. No, 2 weeks away. No, 1 week away for where I get to dump in all the money I got. I went and got a mortgage, right? So I'm going to dump all that money into the stock market or Bitcoin. Don't know which one yet. So here was my question.
Fire away.
So I'm waiting for the interest rates to come down before I do the mortgage, by the way. If you can get 6% in a CD, how long would you lock it up for?
6%?
Yeah.
Well,
isn't that pretty good?
That's more than pretty good. That's phenomenal.
I know. That's why I was like,
it's these 5 or 5.5% CDs that, when you're getting 5% on a CD, it really does start to compete for money. And we saw, there was a time, there was up to, $6 trillion in, money markets because they were getting this type of money. Now, as we start to cut rates, this is going to start to go away. But
I know. That's why I want to do it. I got extra money and it's 6% to me seems very good.
6% is phenomenal. In all likelihood, that rate there is going to be the best money market or CD, or I don't know how long you got to lock it up.
It said 3 years minimum.
3-year minimum. But you know what? If you have money you're setting aside for that long, in my opinion, it could be, 5 or 10 years before the rates get back to that, if that. If it's been
Bainbridge.
It's been only, we've only gotten in the last 20 years, we really haven't had those kind of rates. So this has been an outlier. Now, I don't know what the future holds. If you go further back, we've had rates a lot higher than that. But, in this new millennium, we really haven't had those kind of rates. This has been an anomaly. And it seems like we're now moving into a rate cut environment, which is going to start next week. And those types of deals are going to go away. So it depends, is that money you want? If you think Bitcoin's going to double, then 6% doesn't look so good. But
I have different pools of money, right? Isn't that how you look at it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So George is bringing up a great point. Go ahead.
And so in this pool of money, I can't afford to lose any of it. And so I just figured if I locked it up into 6%, then, it's a good return. I started looking at and they're doing insurance on it too, by the way. Extra insurance.
So, if it's money you're not going to touch, and so that's the thing, just to expand on what George is talking about, and everybody has their own strategy and opinion, but, conventional wisdom says do not put all of your money into ultra high risk things, right? You have different pools of investments. Some of it can be in risk, some of it can be in high risk, some of it can be, in the overall market is, considered medium to low risk over long periods of time, over 10, 20 year periods, the market just goes up and up and up. I remember an article, the Dow was going to get to $20,000. And I remember laughing at how ridiculous that was. And, now we're at $40,000 or 40,000. I shouldn't say dollars. So, if we look,
I have a lot of money in Bitcoin. to me, I have an uncomfortable amount of money in Bitcoin. So
Right.
that to me is too much, but I got it in there anyways.
So if you feel like that position is full, and that's why, I'm many months, for those of you who are members, you've heard me say this many times. I have dollar cost averaged in several times over the last couple of months, but in a very small way, because I've talked about the fact that I already, 6 months ago, I considered my positions all having been filled out. So, we pulled back in a significant enough manner where I added even more money. I was okay with that, but I would have been okay 6 months ago if those positions were all full. So I'm not going to, I'm not looking to double down on Bitcoin at this point, or the Bitcoin miners more specifically. And so that's why everybody's at a different place. And this is why, you can't listen to just, somebody on YouTube or a financial channel or whatever the case may be, or your friend or your uncle or whatever, because, everybody's financial situation is different. So I would just say, hopefully everybody has some amount of money. They've an emergency fund, right? We've all heard of that. You have some amount of money that's safe if you can.
JD said that, Michael Saylor said this, diversification is taking money from a winner and putting it into a loser. Is he trying to tell us something about Bitcoin?
Oh, he's not diversifying. He's been, yes, that JD, that is true. Now, when you're a billionaire,
yeah,
you kind of get to do different things. But even with that said, Michael Saylor, it's not just MicroStrategy, which he's the chairman of the board of. He personally is putting, the bulk of his money into Bitcoin. So he's all in. He can afford to do that. He doesn't.
Do you think he has every single penny into Bitcoin?
No, but everything's relative. He could have $30 million in cash, and to him, that could be, an insignificant. He could still consider himself all in on Bitcoin. I'm using numbers. I don't know exactly what his personal financial situation is, but you understand, right. If you're a billionaire, if you have $1 billion or $5 billion or $10 billion of net worth, you tuck $30 million away. That's really, a rounding error. It's insignificant.
If you cross the $1 billion, yep. But we don't know that Bitcoin is going to be it could be the loser. I hate to say it, but there's a chance it could be a loser. I have, a lot of money into it, but it could be. I don't know. We don't know. No one here knows that for sure. We hope it and believe it, but no one knows it for sure.
You're 100% right about that. We can have very strong conviction, and it can be based on a lot of valid, research and data, but, we don't know what the future.
No,
we don't know the future. So
Tom and George, which will happen first? Bitcoin to 500K or the Bills winning a Super Bowl? Sorry.
I'm sad to say the answer to that.
Bitcoin to 500.
Bitcoin to 500K.
Yeah, I will. Thanks, Mark.
Listen, I just got through screaming last night that it's our year. This is our year, which every Bills fan says every year since I've been born. And guess what? We've been wrong every year. So I'm very excited. I think the Bills looked great. I think they got a great team. They can compete. But I just, it starts to feel like a jinx or a curse. And we're not the first city to have that. Boston didn't win a World Series for 80 years or whatever it was. And then they won a bunch of them. So, but that doesn't feel like that for Buffalo. We're 0 for 4, and now we got Kansas City in the way, and we can't forget losing them. We can't even get there anymore. So, and not to mention, it's not a bad consolation prize to have Bitcoin at 500K. Actually, as much of a mega Bills fan as I am, I would if you asked me which one do you want more, it would be the same answer. Bitcoin to 500K. Let's have that. I can suffer. I'm 50-something years into watching the Bills not win the Super Bowl, so that's just fine.
With can you see if people on the stream think maybe do a chat and see if ETH is dead?
ETH?
Yeah.
All right, so I just put that up. Do you think ETH is dead money? So do we think Ethereum is not going to participate this time around, or, lag all the other cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin?
Wow. So far, I'm in shock. I put no, just so you know. But wow, I didn't expect to see that.
Yeah, well, let's see. Yeah, we're getting... I've been on record for years. I think Bitcoin is so vastly superior to Ethereum in every way, shape, or form. And I also think the two fundamental differences are nobody's in charge of Bitcoin. And so, number one. And number two, it's proof of work. So, and number three, with Ethereum, they just made a major change. Didn't just, it's been quite a while now. They moved from proof of work to proof of stake. That's a fundamental change in their project. I mean, it's the most fundamental change you can make. The only problem is they've already told us they're going to have 4 more huge fundamental changes over time. So, it's, I don't have a comfort level with that at all. And to me, it's just so inferior to Bitcoin. That makes me sound like a Bitcoin maximalist, and maybe I am, although I do have other projects that I've been saying, for those of you who don't know, I've been putting my time in researching altcoins. I think I still have some time before it's altcoin season, but I am making a list, and I will share that list. I'll share one right now that, is getting some buzz, and I think it hasn't even started to run. And that is Kaspa.
You like Kaspa, huh?
I've started to dig as deep as I can into that, and I'm really bullish on Kaspa. So, I haven't, and I own none. So it may be time to move before I miss and regret it. But that, to me, that's a very strong project. And, I am not the altcoin expert. I will be the first person.
Who's using it? What are they using it for?
It's first of all, it's a proof.
Utility.
It's a proof of work. It can transact at a much faster speed. Now, I understand Bitcoin has the Lightning Network, and Bitcoin's not necessarily where people are going to transact day-to-day business as well. But Kaspa has much more of that capacity. They're just getting going. They're again, the proof of work to me is a big deal, and I know there's several proof of works out there that are, I'll kind of say, I don't want to say dead money, but stuck in the mud, and they're not really going anywhere. There's a version of Ethereum out there that's still proof of work, and it's not really doing much. But there's a growing. Also, some of it has to do with the amount of buzz that's going out there. Also, they have Marathon, which is very vocal about their Kaspa mining. Also, they're not listed on Binance yet. They're not listed on Coinbase yet. And those are big catalysts. And I have an article today that goes right to that point. Let me find that. Okay, so this has kind of been talk about dead money. Polygon, or Matic, spiked 15% when it just got listed on Binance, and that was a 15% move in 24 hours to the upside. Now, whether that holds or not, we'll see. But so those are, to me, those are all catalysts. It's not on, Kaspa's not on Binance. It's not on Coinbase, and it's just only now starting to come into the public consciousness and awareness, and there's some big people backing it. Obviously, the biggest of which by a mile is Marathon. So, I see some people talking about Solana. Yeah, I mean, Solana's been the big winner so far. And if you ask most people, I think right now that is the most popular altcoin out there. I mean, we can do a poll on that and you guys can tell me what you think, but there's definitely and I'm not saying, the other thing is there's an awful lot of room market cap wise for Caspa to move. And, if we look at the peak for these altcoins, if you look back to the peak of last altcoin season, these market caps can get way up there. Now, they're not going to approach, none of them get anywhere near where a Bitcoin or an Ethereum is, but, you get 10Xs, 20Xs, 30Xs in previous cycles. There's a lot. You don't have to go, you don't have to go 1,000 down the list and get lucky. A lot of these altcoins in the past have run like crazy during altcoin season. So no guarantee that that'll happen in the future. And some succeed, some fail. And obviously it depends when you get in and it depends when you get out, right? If you hold too long and you don't get your profits, then it makes no difference how high they ran. So, and again, with Caspa, it's not financial advice. It's my opinion. That's one of the ones I'm looking at. And I just I'm looking to get into a few and get a little diverse basket going.
Arrow is up 17% today. I was told. It was crazy.
Somebody told you and it happened?
Sean, yeah, he's been right on the money on these things.
Wow.
ABT?
Nice job.
ABT was the best one he gave me.
I got to get back.
I have no idea what it does. He just tells me to buy them, and I do. My whole thing, though, is the time frame of these things. They don't. If you want them to pump in a week or two, that doesn't happen. It takes months and months.
Well, look, it's the same with Bitcoin. We're waiting for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that is brutally high. I don't care if it's a stock or a cryptocurrency. Like these periods of consolidation are they're rough. And this is where a lot of people get washed out. And somebody made I can't remember who it was. They made a comment that Bitcoin's not going to go, to 150,000 because if it did, everybody would get rich and everybody's not going to be rich. But the reality is, everybody won't get rich because, it's these type of 6-month periods that have already washed out a significant amount of people. So a lot of those people that got washed out aren't even going to come back in. If at all, they'll start to FOMO in when we hit new all-time highs again. And all of a sudden, we go from nobody talking about Bitcoin to everybody talking about Bitcoin. That's what's happened in the past. So, all too many people, unfortunately, buy in on that last leg up. So it's only the people that bought, dollar cost averaged in, held, and sell at or near the top, or at least take profits. Those are the ones that, and even to say get rich, unless you have a lot of money, you'll have a great return on your investment, but, getting rich is a relative term.
And it's really hard when you see, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000, and numbers higher than that down. It hurts. I saw Maryland Gaming on. He's always like, I can't tell my wife.
Robert Anderson said, need a Caspa video.
Yeah, I just looked at their white pages, Tom. Oh, did you read them?
Yep.
Oh, really? It just looks like they parroted freaking Bitcoin.
Well, that's in many, many ways they have. I think they've tweaked it to make I'm not gonna say it's better than Bitcoin, but I think from a functionality standpoint, I think that's what you just said, I think is what they're trying to do. We're Bitcoin, but we're a little more functional than Bitcoin, a lot more. So whether or not that plays out, we'll see what happens. Do you think ETH is dead money? Guess what? 48%. Yes. 52%. No, this is almost an even split. So sentiment on ETH among this group, at least, is not good. And I don't know, I'm not sure if I would call it dead money, but I will not. And I was considering, a month ago, I was thinking, well, you know what? With the Ethereum ETFs, I've got easy access to it. Maybe I'll diversify and get into that. And I didn't do it. And I'm probably not going to. I can't definitively say that, but I don't think that I'm going to. Hey, Sour Melon Gaming just jumped in and said, I'm here, George. Love you, buddy. I've had to be distracted my wife for the last several weeks. She'd kill me.
Yeah,
Wow.
see 22K on Riot. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think I'm down. Well, I don't like talking numbers, but I'm down like 30% on Riot. That's why I took my breather on it. But I'm out of jail next week, Tommy.
That's right. You can hopefully things will hold. Listen, hey, especially if you want to buy into Riot, guess what? We'll go back to that chart real quick. Here's the good news, George. Unless that next week is the giant run up, you've still got 9 of the 12 Bitcoin miners in the red year to date. Some of them way in the red. Riot's down 53%. Marathon's down 31%. These are the year to date numbers through 8.5 months. So Bitfarms down 30%. Cleanspark's down 15% year to date, but it's way off of its highs. So if we look, remember, it's a lot of these played out perfectly. So I bought right here. So I didn't get this. It went even lower. But to me, this was such a super strong, great entry point, in my opinion, that, I did buy. And it's Marathon is another position where I had felt I filled out my position. But when it bounced off this line again, I did add a little more. And, we pulled a little bit back, but since then, from the bottom until the close today, that's a 22% move in a week. And, to the top, it was almost 27%. But, to my point, even with the fantastic green week that every single Bitcoin miner had, they're not. So from here to get back to 2 weeks ago, it's still got to go up another 16% almost. That's just to get back to where it was 2 weeks ago. To get back to where it was in July, it's got to go up 68%. So, and that wasn't its high. It's, high of this time around. So to get back to that from here, you're still talking more than a double just to get back to where it was in February. And February is when Bitcoin, it hadn't even finished its run to 73,000 and change. So that's one of the reasons I think that the miners, and they may jump around, right? There's, if I were just to make a little, like, if you look at Marathon, and this is how I kind of look at things, I could easily see Marathon jumping back into this trading range. So, I'm not saying there's no room and they're stuck forever, but look how long they traded comfortably in here. They went to, a couple times they got below this. One time they got above this, but, from where they are right now to the top of this range, it's 40% move. So there's, if you're swing trading, even if we're going sideways, right, there's money, there's potential money to be made, up and down, we're all over the place. But if we were to go back there, Robin's saying buy Stronghold. So that should lead us to the Stronghold news. So let me go to that, and then we'll go to, so this is some Bitfarms news, and then we have some Cleanspark news. We didn't even really get to the big news for these Bitcoin miners. So let's get to it. I'm going to close this poll out. It's 53 to 47, but we're almost, split down the middle on, is ETH dead money? So that's a very surprising result to me. Having said that, you know, I'm on record. I'm not a big fan of ETH, and at this point, I don't believe I'll be buying it. But you never know. Okay, so let's just go through this real quickly. Okay, so this came out today. Bitfarms enters into 10,000 miner hosting agreement with Stronghold Digital Mining. So you might say, well, wait a second, they bought Stronghold. So this is an acceleration of getting their machines in. Instead of having to wait for this deal to close, they're going to get 10,000 machines in there right now. And so with this, they're saying the agreement to support 2.2 exahash with energization expected in October, 2 months ahead of schedule. So this is an addition. So this gets them ahead of schedule. These machines were slated to go to, I think, Paraguay. They're going to send them here instead. They have more machines coming. By the time Paraguay's ready, they'll get those there. So they company reiterates its 2024 and 2025 guidance. So 2024, you know, and it's now the middle of September, they're still saying they're going to get to 21 exahash in 2024 and 35 exahash in 2025. And they've kind of laid out their plan on how they're going to do that. So this helps them. Now, what I did not like about this, and in the end, it should make no difference at all. So if this deal goes through, the only thing that's really happened in here is they've gotten their machines in faster. This is an acceleration of getting these machines energized. So I like that part of it. But if you look, and they say right here, under the terms of the hosting agreement, Bitfarms will be accelerating the deployment of 10,000 Bitmain T21 miners. But what I'm looking for is the terms here. Bitfarms will pay Stronghold a monthly fee to 50%. Bitfarms will pay Stronghold a monthly fee equal to 50% of the profit generated by Bitfarms miners, subject to certain monthly adjustments. So let me get back to that. I want to get to Robbie. Robbie Rose, thank you very much for the super chat. Oh, thank you, Robbie. And Robbie said, hit the like button, everyone, and hold your positions. So thank you, Robbie, for the support to everybody. And we're at 99 likes. So, yes, we're almost there. So much appreciated. Hold strong. Hope you had a good week.
Nice to get that to like 1,000 likes, Tom.
I know. And this is, you know, this is one of the indicators that, you know, retail interest is out of Bitcoin. It's out of the Bitcoin miners, right? We just looked at how they performed year to date. And I believe it will come back around. It ebbs and flows. So Bitfarms will pay Stronghold 50% of the profits. So to me, I don't like that at all. I think a part of this has to do with two things. Number one, if all goes as planned, sooner than later, Bitfarms will own Stronghold, and this whole entire agreement will be irrelevant because they'll be one and the same. And two, you know, if I'm to look a little deeper, and, you know, this is just my opinion, this is a little bit of, you know, putting pressure. If this deal, you know, if Riot was to jump in the way of this deal and try and hold it up in some way, these terms, in my opinion, are not favorable to Bitfarms. So if this deal were to get spoiled, now all of a sudden they've signed a multi-year agreement to split the profits 50-50. And so I think, you know, maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. Does anybody else think that, you know, that's a part of what's going on here? Because
when did this come out?
Today.
What time?
I don't know. I think it was this morning. 10:23 a.m.
I guess they didn't like it today, huh? That seems like a really good deal for Stronghold.
I think it's this sentence right here, because the top of this is great news. They're getting 2.2 exahash up and running early. that's great news. I think this is the whammy right here. Now, again, if this deal goes through, it's not a whammy because Stronghold is Bitfarms. And then, there is no split. They're the same thing. It's only really if the deal doesn't go through, and by the deal, I mean the Bitfarms purchasing Stronghold, then these terms would be relevant. And these seem like not good terms for Bitfarms, in my opinion. So,
and you know what is crazy about that? Did you read that they're giving them $8 million basically?
Right.
As a deposit for dude, all they got to do is file bankruptcy and they never get that money back.
Right. $7.8 million deposit that they would get back at December 31st, 2025 at the end of the terms here. So, yeah, all of this.
To me, it just seems like they're doing this to screw up the deal with Riot, by the way.
I think this part of it, this second half here, I think is a little insurance against Riot trying to mess this deal up. But the first half of it, this is very natural. When you buy a company for the synergies that you're going to get, and you can accelerate that, right? The whole point of buying Stronghold was they had energy there that was waiting to be utilized, right? Stronghold doesn't have the latest ingredient. They don't have the Bitmain T21 miners to put in there to mine efficiently, but Bitfarms has 10,000 that they can go drop in there right away. So the top half of this deal, I think, is great. The terms, I think, are not great. So, which again, if the purchase goes through of Stronghold by Bitfarms, then the terms are meaningless.
What was the price point that they were going to pay for the stock?
Oh, I can't remember.
I
mean, it was 100. The equivalence, I think it was $125 million in.
What was the price point per stock? I think it was in the fives.
It was something in the high fives, I thought, but I don't want to say the wrong number. Melon Gaming saying Bitfarm stock needs to move already. I'm locked and loaded heavily, but it hasn't done anything. And I think Riot, you can thank Riot for that. Riot is tanking their own stock and Bitfarm stock, in my opinion, by doing what they're doing. That's my opinion.
When do you give up on them?
On Riot or Bitfarms?
Yeah. No, Riot, because Bitfarms would be okay.
Yeah, right. So thank you. Yes, I don't, unless I see something dramatic, I'm not giving up on Bitfarms. For Riot, it's all going to still be, this is a giant distraction and I don't like it. But if they continue to implement their own growth strategy, and I see the improvement that they have promised, then I'm going to stick with them, right? If they get to their 32 exahash by the end of this year, and they're, and they continue to improve on their efficiency in mining, their cost per coin is already, really low. It's among the most competitive cost per coin. So they have a good gross profit margin. They need to mine more Bitcoin. So they need to continue building out their infrastructure, and they need to have a higher percentage of their machines up and running, right? Their discrepancy between the amount of exahash they have and the average operating exahash per month is the biggest out of any Bitcoin miner. There's a big, I think they were at like 23 exahash, but like 15 exahash on the average hashing throughout the month. And you can double check those numbers. They're probably not exactly right, but it was something to that effect. That's a big, big discrepancy. While you see a lot of other Bitcoin miners, at 90 or 95 or 98% uptime of the machines that they have, Riot has lagged on that. Now you got to affect some of that for the fact that they got $6 or $7 million in energy credits or something like that. So that's a part of it. And Robin's saying Riot is not going to dump Bitfarms. That would be insane. So I think, so to your point, Robin, I'll expand on what I think you're saying, and I agree with. I don't think they're just going to dump all of their shares at once onto the market. So, I think they'll strategically exit their position. They have just under a 20% share of in Bitfarms. So that's a lot of stock that, right? If they stop pursuing this at some point, then, the natural order of things would be they would divest themselves from, their direct competitor. But, it would be to their own benefit to do that in a methodical way where, they don't lose a bunch of money themselves. Although, I don't know if if they deem that insignificant and or they're spiteful or whatever the case, that would not be a good business decision. But so that's hard to say.
Gary, you'll be happy to know I finally bought, what is it, IREN now?
Yeah,
IREN.
that's a surprising turnaround for you because they are one of the ones that does not hodl their Bitcoin, but their growth has been spectacular. I think that is going to continue.
Well, I just think they move. I bought it just because I feel that they move. And I haven't owned them before, so I could be in that stock.
Oh, right. While you're waiting out the clock on the other ones, that's something.
Yep.
Well, that's a very good point. I want to get to the other news of the week. This was really the bigger news by far of the week. CleanSpark to add 5 exahash and increase 2024 guidance with acquisition of 7 additional Bitcoin mining facilities in Tennessee. So, let me just skip to the highlights here. If I can find them. Give me a second. The operating hash rate of the combined facilities is anticipated to result in 5 exahash per second once the latest generation S21 Pro miners are installed, increasing the company's current hash rate by over 22%. The miners required for expansion have recently arrived and will be installed promptly upon the closing of each site. The 7 sites total 85 megawatts and range in size from 10 to 20 megawatts. So all in, that's 5 exahash, and this is what I'm looking for. We now expect to achieve 37 exahash before the end of 2024. So we've got a few companies with big targets, and CleanSpark just upped theirs. And I want to just show you, I think this is it. So you can see from their most recent investor presentation, until they put that press release out, their target for the year, they were going to get to 32 exahash this year. So they're looking to get to 32 exahash. I think Riot has the same target. Now, CleanSpark mines a lot more Bitcoin than Riot. They get much more Bitcoin per exahash. They always have. If Riot can change that in the future, great. I hope they do, but, it's not even close right now. So this 32 is now, so they're now targeting 37 exahash. To put it in perspective, if I go to where everybody sits right now, so this is everybody's current exahash if they were running 100% of their machines. Marathon's at 35 exahash, way out ahead of everybody else. And then you'll see a little group here. CleanSpark's at 22, Core Scientific's at 20.5, Riot's at 23, but like I said, they're only actually using 15. So CleanSpark's now looking to get to 37 exahash. That's more than Marathon's doing right now. So now, obviously, Marathon's looking to grow. They're looking to get over 50 by the end of the year. But you're going to see a few of these companies, as we're already seeing. You can see Marathon and CleanSpark from a amount of Bitcoin mined per month. These two have just broken away from the field, period. Marathon's at 673 in August, and CleanSpark's at 478. So even though they're far behind Marathon, they're 120 ahead of Core Scientific, with much bigger growth plans for the rest of the year than Core Scientific. So that discrepancy is going to increase in all likelihood over time. So I think you're going to see by the end of the year, Marathon and CleanSpark will be mining significantly more Bitcoin than everybody else, which they already are. And I think that trend's going to continue. Now, some of the IREN has giant growth plans this year. They actually jumped from 6th last month up to 5th. They passed Bitfarms. I think these top 6 are locked in for the rest of the year. they just have a lot. These 6 companies have a lot bigger growth plans in 2024. So I think you're probably going to see these top 6 stay unchanged. But to me, this was big news for CleanSpark that they're now targeting 37 by the end of the year. And then they put out a press release yesterday. CleanSpark's hash rate exceeds 26 exahash. So you can see last month they were at 22. Now by September 12th, they're already at 26. So they are growing fast. So we should see some nice month-over-month growth in their exahash and in the amount of Bitcoin that they mined. Despite the fact that the hash rate does continue to grow, the difficulty level went up again a couple of days ago. We're at a new all-time high difficulty level for the Bitcoin mining network.
Interesting. So I pulled up the 10K challenge, Tom.
See, that's been a roller. Could talk about a roller coaster because we've been pretty much buy and hold in there. So we are just, you know.
At one point in time, it was up. Well, I mean, from the 3 years. For the 3 years, it's down 62% right now.
Yeah, that's killer. But we were up like 300% this year at one point. Now we're probably way off of our highs.
No, yeah, we're down to $4,407. No trades made.
We were almost double that, right? Three and a half months ago. So
how about this one? From a year ago, from September 15th till now, we're still up 44%.
Yeah, so that's the zoom out scenario. Even with all of this bad news, if you're buying and holding or dollar cost averaging in, and so what plays right into this, Sour Melon Gaming is asking, Tom, what's your game plan if Bitcoin stays range bound the rest of the year? Would you sell any stock? So I would not sell any stock just because Bitcoin is range bound for the rest of the year. I'm only going to sell these stocks in the next, 3.5 months, which is the rest of this year, if I see a fundamental change in what one of these companies is doing. And the one, obviously, that I'm looking at most closely by far is Riot. And to me, they've done what they needed to do for me to remain confident that they're going to get where they're going. I don't think they've hit a home run. I think there's other Bitcoin miners whose monthly operational updates have been a home run. I think Riot has trended nicely in the right direction, and I feel like that's going to continue. It's just my personal opinion. I don't like the Bitfarms thing. I will say I learned a week ago when I put a comment out on X, the overwhelming, almost every single response that I did not expect at all. I put a comment about, Riot's under $7. Was it a bargain? Are you guys buying at this point? Almost every single response to that was, they're killing me with this Bitfarms thing. I hate what they're doing with Bitfarms. They're ruining their company. I sold their stock. I'm not. So it was and maybe that's just the vocal minority. I don't know, but there was a lot of outrage over that in the comments. So totally anecdotal, obviously. Small sample group. So Bitcoin is at 60,320. So whereas last week we were holding our breath, I'm going to go to the 1 day. Last week we were holding our breath down at this white line to see if it was going to hold or we were going to break to new lows. This week we are now testing. We have a lot of different lines on here, but we happen to be bouncing from this white one to this white one, and that's at 60,200, and that goes back to May 10th. So you can see that, that was this point right here, and that provided nice support right here. And, then when we broke it, we ran right down and tested, the next line of support. So we're at this. If we can break out of this, I do really think, I know there's some lines in between, but if we can get above this right here, I feel like there's a really good chance of retesting this. And then we can figure out, if we retest that, we can figure out, can we go retest this? Which would be, retesting that would get us kind of back up to the top of this range. right? So that's the ride. Are we, finally, we failed here. Are we finally going to bounce back up to the top of this trading range that we have been in for the last 6 months? At which point I will probably buy some puts. Because until we break out of this, I have no reason to believe that we're going to break out of this. So that's my personal opinion. Again, not financial advice. We're on a good note. We're on a good note to end here, George. We got Bitcoin on a roll, up 60,300. You got any other thoughts, comments?
Yeah. How long did it last halving? How many months was it before we took off?
It's typically, this 6-month period is typical, but this 6 months is different because this started before the halving. So it's not the identical window as it relates to the halving. So there would still be more time left if we were to strictly go from the halving itself. And not every halving has been identical. So, it's really hard to tell. I think an awful lot of people feel like October is just about the time frame. There's a big consensus that we're going to get a breakout in October for Bitcoin. As you remember, one of you changed your name to Rectember. The consensus was September's a nightmare and a disaster. And I will show you, I think I have this chart up somewhere. So this is the monthly. September, and I understand we're not even halfway over. Right now we're green in September. So, and this is one of the things we talked about a lot coming into September. This overwhelming consensus that September was going to be an absolute disaster nightmare. I laid out on like September 1st or 2nd, or maybe it was the 3rd, that it just felt like they were going to dump like crazy at the beginning of September, confirm everybody's worst nightmare that September was the end of the world, scare every retail investor out of the market, and then rally. So, we're not done with that. I don't know that that's how it's going to play out, but you can see, we took a big jump down, and now all of a sudden we're green again. So we'll see what happens. And obviously in the middle of all that, there's a major event, which is going to be the first rate cut in 4 years. And is it going to be 25 basis points or 50 basis points? Is the market going to mess with us again surrounding that? So, it's tough. These are tough waters to navigate through.
Tough.
So, and so these lines are the halvings. So you can see we're a ways after it now. Anyway, we're very green right now. We had a green day all day, and the market's taken off since the equities market has closed here in the U.S. So let's hope. Edmund is saying green for September. So yes.
You want to end this at a high note.
That's what I'm saying. We're at the high of the day. We're at recent highs. We had a great, here's the chart. We're at the high of the day. All 12 Bitcoin miners were green this week. Bitcoin was up big this week. So congratulations to everybody. Hopefully this helped ease the blow of the 2 previous weeks, which were very rough. So thank you for joining us on the stream. Everybody, hopefully you guys enjoy your weekend, and special thanks to all the members. Thanks for all the comments and likes. George, thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend, everybody.